Hey everybody, what we'll do today is we'll take an apple, actually several apples, and make applesauce. So the first thing you'll do is to cut them into little pieces, not too little. I'll probably actually only cut these in quarters, and then I'll fill this pan with some water and a little bit of lemon juice, and I'll cook the apples for a while. Once the apples are cooked, I'll put them through the food strainer, can them, and then we're done. So first thing we'll do is I have just 1 pack of apples. I don't know my measurements, but I wrote down last time I did this that 1 pack of apples turned into 6 pints of applesauce. So I'll get the knife and all that fun stuff, start cutting and cooking, and then I'll meet you back probably when we run them through the food strainer. So this is my last apple. As I started getting into the cutting of them, I decided to cut them into 8 pieces because they were giving me chunks about like that. So I put a little bit of lemon juice into this water. This is just a big stock pot. So to cut the apple, it's pretty simple. In half, in 4s, and then in 8s. Once you have that, cook them until they're tender with a fork into the pot, and then you're done. Okay, I kind of touched on this in a video I made with the peach preserves, but this is just your basic stock pot or canning pot. You can get it at any store. It's nothing extravagant. It holds, I think, 7 pints. Adeline was nice enough to wash and clean my jars, so just kind of give you how I do this for this canning pot. So you want to make sure that you add the water when you have your jars in there. So what I do is you have this jar rack, it holds 7 pints, and then I'll lower it into the pot, and as I begin filling, I make sure that the jars get filled with water, and I add a splash of just regular vinegar. That helps keep the scale off of the jars. You can do it without the vinegar. Vinegar is just a cosmetic thing for making sure the outside of your jars don't get all filmy. But again, just filling this up, including the volume of water that would fill it, all 7 jars. And I'm going to start to water now. The apples have been cooking for a few moments, and but if you wait to start your jars, you can't rush boiling water. So add the water, put your little splash of vinegar in if you want to, and then get your jars starting to heat up at that same time. Okay. While the apples are cooking and the canning water is heating, I will put together the strainer. So my mother-in-law let me borrow her squeeze-o strainer. These are really cool, and you'll see it when I get to going, but put the apples in here, and that's why I only was worried about cutting down big, small enough to get into this strainer hole. See, about 1.5 inches. Because as you crank through, the auger drives the sauce out through the mesh holes. At the end of the auger comes all the waste, so seeds, stems, skins, anything that's not apple will come out the end. So very handy way to make applesauce. And I made it before where you take the skins off with a peeler corer and then try to mash them up as the best you can, but this way is the best. So if you have access to one of these squeeze-o strainers, this is the way to go. So while we're waiting for the apples to cook and the canning water to become ready, I'm trying to put this squeeze-o together by memory, or see if I have to use the owner's manual. So we put the drive into the auger, and that goes into the housing. And then you put your handle on, wing nut it on. the right piece. Alright, we'll deal with that later. And then you take your chute and your strainer. They have to go on as one piece. Your strainer goes on there, maybe. These wing nuts on. Alright. Then you pull the whole thing in with your wing nuts. Alright. Then you've got to clamp it to something, depending on what you clamp it to. Yikes. Depending on what you clamp it to. I went down to the wood shop and cut a couple pieces of Lumon shims, so I didn't reef up my dining room table. But you'll run your squeezo to that. This will be your saucepan. This will be your waste bowl, and then you crank it as you process it. So the apples have been cooking for a while. I've come in here occasionally and stirred them down for the ones that are floating on the top. How do you know when they're ready? You grab an apple, try to grab one that's kind of representative, and it's like cooking a potato, fork tender. So you can stick a fork in there pretty easy into the fleshy part. Struggling with this part a little bit. But you can stick a fork in it pretty easy. That's when we'll say that it's ready to go. So these are more or less ready to run through the food mill. Okay, so we got the handle fixed. Got a nut that fits the handle. And so this is going to be keep mashing and mashing the apples down as until we're out of apples. And then what I'll do is I will run this waste that comes out. I'll run that back through. And then next phase after all this is done is to can it. Alright, so we've got the apples, applesauce sweetened to taste. Got used honey this time. Sweetened it to the girls thought it was sweet enough. So what you do now is you take your jar out. I always pour a little bit of the hot water back in before I get rid of all of it. And then, I wish I had more counter space, but it is what it is. And you just ladle it in somewhere around the neighborhood of a 1/2 inch head space. And then you put it back into your water bath, remembering that your processing time, whatever the manufacturer recommends or recipe recommends, doesn't start until your jars are in there and boiling. So we have 4 more in here. Anything that won't make it to either a full pint or if we have to get an extra jar, just put that in the refrigerator and eat that first. The canned food will last a long time on the shelf. So that's kind of the overview of how we make applesauce, and hope if you see this, you realize how simple it can be. Doesn't have to be expensive or difficult. $8 for the apples. The other canning specific stuff like the funnel and the water bath canner, I've had long enough now that they don't count, but they were cheap when I bought them. So big stock pot and $8 worth of apples, a couple jars that are reusable, and you can make your own applesauce that's simple, healthy, So, hope you found all that useful.